Just when we are relieved, right? There's going to be another obstacle down the road, but at least we bought us some time, right?
Well, and that's really been the key all along. Greece can never pay this money back. I mean, let's be honest. Given the state of the Greek economy, the size of the debt, they'll never pay it back. But I think the whole logical strategy, really for the last few years, is string Greece along, nurse Greece along for long enough for the rest of the periphery and the rest of the European economy to get healthy, and for the European banks to get healthy. And we're actually moving a good deal along that road right now. I think Europe is picking up. Countries like Ireland are doing better. Spain is doing better. Italy is doing a little bit better. So if Europe can continue to improve, even if the Greek situation remains critical, the longer we go, the less dangerous it's going to be if Greece eventually does have to leave the euro.
But, David, it's been a 5-year Greek drama already,
yes.
Right? So how much longer, how many more years before Europe really gets back on footing and says, okay, we can finally get this done?
Well, I mean, it is tragic, and I do feel very sorry for the Greek people because, honestly, Europe ought to have been a little bit more generous at the outset. Austerity in the middle of a recession is not ever a good idea. So it was a bad policy from the start.
But they wanted to enforce some discipline.
Well, yes, but in fact, what they ended up with, of course, was the election of an extreme left-wing party in Greece because of it. And in fact, the great worry now in Europe, the biggest worry left, is that extremist left parties will win elsewhere in Europe because the public just doesn't trust European institutions at all. So I think it's important that that we don't have a full-blown crisis in Greece. But the rest.
So should they hold back going forward on enforcing these stringent austerity measures, holding the Greeks to those? Should they step back from that?
A little bit, but I think they can negotiate with Greece. I mean, the one thing that we've learned in the last few weeks is even this new Syriza government realizes that they don't have any cards in their hand.
Right.
I mean, and it's very hard to go all in when you've got nothing in your hand. And the Greek negotiating position is getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and that's really why they capitulated.
Strong right on the day of the election,
and it was
weakened.
And it was much stronger back in 2012 when, frankly, the European banks were in much worse trouble than they are right now. But now that that's not so much of a problem, Greece doesn't have that much of a threat.
But here's where they might have leverage, and Larry Fink of BlackRock, I thought, outlined it very well. And I want to play for you, David, what he said about what leverage Greece does have.
Sure.
In 2010, if Greece failed then, the private sector owned most of the Greek debt. Today, 70-ish% of the Greek debt is held by the ECB, Greek banks, they're all part of that, and then you have the IMF who has a huge loan outstanding to Greece. So it's not a private sector problem.
There's more skin in the game.
Well, but it's not a private sector problem, and that's really the point. I mean, ultimately, some of this debt is bad, and I think that the European Central Bank and the IMF will take a hit from it eventually. But if that's far enough down the road, if that's when unemployment has come down in Europe, I mean, the Greek debt is a lot for the Greeks. It's still not enormous in terms of the global economy or even in terms of the European economy. So it's a hit, but it's a hit that's going to be much more palatable for Europe if it could be delayed by a few more years rather than having it right now.
So here in the U.S., David, have we avoided the catastrophe? Are we free and clear?
I think a lot of our worries are going away. I think we've still got a fiscal cliff debate over the Department of Homeland Security this week, but I think political forces will force them to an agreement here. The U.S. is really getting better. We've got obviously lousy weather up in Boston where I live, but if you can get past this freeze, consumers are very well positioned. Lower gasoline prices are helping. I think housing will improve. So I think the U.S. is getting better, and I think that will ultimately support the stock market and higher interest rates this year.